Hey there friends, welcome back. If you saw the last video, you kind of know what's going on. Our Avantis is down, and this is a rental, and I'm tired of spending money on something we're never going to own. So our SQ6 came in, our Dante card came in today. Before I get all that moved around, I'm going to make sure I have copies of this scene from here so that when I get my Avantis back, I have a good starting place. I'm also going to take copies of the scenes that are on my SQ5 to have as a starting place for the SQ6. It's not going to be exact, but it should work just fine. So before I get all that going, I'm going to hop over here and just update my input list and make sure everything is correct and in order. Then I will show you guys what I'm actually shrinking my channel count down to for us to get by on Sunday. All right, let's go. Okay, so I'm fixing to give you guys a rundown of my input sheet and what I've got it down to. I normally run about 54-ish channels of audio. Now, that's not 54 direct inputs. That's about 24 inputs coming from the stage and the mic rack and things like that that are double patched for in-ears so that whatever I do to in-ears doesn't affect the house and vice versa. And then some auxiliary things that go in and out. So computer, a second input for iPad, backup, redundant grab mics, pastor mics, things like that. So we'll let you take a look at this, and then I'm going to get moving some hardware around. Okay, so if we take a look, it's pretty straightforward. I've got all my drums patched down here, kick, snare, hat tom 1 and 2, overhead left and right, track and click. I'm just going to run tracks in mono for now. Bass keys, all 3 guitars, all 3 vocals, and then in the old patch sheet I would have had 2 grab mics here, 2 pastor mics, a second iPad input for Spotify, things like that. So I've knocked those down, and you'll notice though I left them in the same spot on the patch sheet so that I don't have to bump them up, so that when I actually patch everything through into Dante, I don't have to do a bunch of flipping around to make it land in the same place. So I don't have to do a bunch of relabeling and things. And then when I come down here, I've got the same stuff patched down again from 25 down. Now, the question is if I can find a place to squeeze in the room mics or not. Knocking out this other stuff, I should have room for that. And then I didn't really have to change anything for IEMs. Everything should be exactly the same, and it should still leave me with some extra outputs in case I need them. Now, I know you're probably sitting there trying to make sense of all the color coding, and it doesn't coincide with anything on the sheet, but it does coincide with the layering on the Avantis. So drums are in red, click and track are in gray, and so on and so forth. The one difference is my IEMs over here. This is what's on the GX4816, and this is what's on my DX012 expander. This shouldn't be a super complicated hardware change. I'm just going to copy scenes from the Avantis so that I've got those when ours comes back. I'm going to copy scenes from the SQ5 to have a starting place on the SQ6 and go from there. Everything will route into Dante, and then I can, move things around and cross-patch them as I need to make them all land in the same place that they already do on the SQ5. We'll just run a little skinny here for a month or so, not having extra grab mics and redundancies that I normally like to have, taking tracks down to mono versus stereo, things like that. All right, let's get rolling. The Avantis is all packed up. It is time to get the SQ6 in place. Okay, the SQ6 is in place. The Dante card is already installed, which you saw a second ago. If you've never done that, it's super simple. On the back, you'll see where the I/O card goes. Just pop the plate off, usually 2 screws. Your Dante card is designed to slide in on rails, and then you will feel it when the pin-to-pin connection is made. It kind of pops into place. Put your screws back in, you're good to go. Boot the console, it will read that the card is there. Now, if you are adding or removing an I/O card of any kind, make sure the console is off when you do that. You'll definitely fry some stuff if you aren't doing that correctly. Now, the next thing that I've got to do is get the show file from the SQ5 and get it onto the SQ6. You might be asking, why are you going to use your broadcast show file on your front of house console? The reality is we're not really using the show file in its entirety, but that has all the customizations on it that I would want on this console as far as layout and things like that. So all of our consoles are optimized for volunteer usage. That said, that will give me a starting point here, because of course things like gain structure and EQ and compression, gating are going to be different in the room than they are online where we've kind of built a fake room, but it'll give me a place to start. So I'm going to grab that show file, get it loaded here, and then we will start patching. Okie doke. All I'm going to do is take my drive and stick it right there in the USB slot. You can see it loading. I'm going to hit utility and go to data. And then I've got my SQ5 scene right here. I'm going to hit recall. Yes, it's doing its thing. Do bear in mind, though, that the SQ6 and the SQ7 being larger consoles than the SQ5, when you pull a show file from a smaller console and load it onto one of the larger ones, there's obviously more soft keys, more programmable encoders and things like that. You didn't have them on that console, but you do now, so they're just not going to be programmed. But if you go the opposite direction, say you take a show file from an SQ7 and you put it on an SQ5, all those extra soft keys and extra channel strips that you had programmed and things sent to will not exist. So you will have to rearrange some things. It's not automatically going to move them into a new bank for you. One more thing to note is that bringing a show file from another SQ series console, it maintains the patching up to the channel count that the console allows. So in this case, it brought the Dante patching from the SQ5 over to this console. And normally that would be a good thing, but in this case, we're patched differently at front of house than we are in broadcast. So I've got local inputs here that I'll need to patch through, as well as digital inputs from our GX4816 backstage. Then I've got to wipe out the Dante patching here and send it out to our track rig and our broadcast console. All right, so I've got all the patching done. I went through here and I got my locals, I got my S-Link, and I got my Dante stuff patched through for inputs coming into the console and then outputs going out to Dante. Everything coming in is either local or going over S-Link, like I said earlier, from our GX4816 stage box that's in the server room. But going out, I'm sending everything from here over Dante. Now, what that means, though, since this is a new Dante card, is I did have to come over here to Dante controller and make sure that the new Dante card, which it won't say this, it'll have some default name, but you can rename it in here, and just make sure that it matched my IP scheme here. That way, controller and Dante routing can all communicate nice and fluid. Now that that is done, I'm actually going to call it quits for today, but I will be back tomorrow to do a little more programming and start working through tracks. So that said, hang tight right there. Welcome to day 2. Small issue, not really an issue, just an inconvenience. The reason that I initially put an Avantis at front of house when we did these upgrades a few years ago and not an SQ series console was because of the virtual soundcheck feature. It's directly integrated into the Avantis where all you have to do is hit a button and wherever you wanted those tracks to come from, the console repatches for you directly into your inputs. It doesn't change gain structure. It doesn't change how anything hits your preamps, anything like that. With the SQ series, they do have a virtual soundcheck integration, but it's done through tie lines and it's designed to either work with the USB input on the console or through a USB connection to a computer, whatever you're using for a tracking rig. That said, kind of have to do things a little different than if I was just throwing another Avantis in place. What I'm going to do today is go ahead and route everything for virtual soundcheck. So I'm actually going to manually repatch all of my tracks to come in from my track rig. Then I'm going to do all the channel processing and save everything. I'll manually repatch back to my live inputs, and then the band is going to get here earlier this Sunday so that I can set gain structure for the live inputs. Now, all the channel processing should be the same. The only thing that's really going to affect is obviously gain, but the way my compressors respond. Outside of that, it should be pretty stinking close, but because of that, I pulled my volunteer for this Sunday. I'm going to run front of house. That way, just in case there is something wrong or something haywire, which I'm not anticipating, but I'd rather be safe than sorry. And that's not something I want to put on a volunteer. I don't want that stress on top of a volunteer technician. So I'm going to take care of that. But before I do, we need to do all of our Dante routing in the Dante controller. So we're going to knock that out real quick, make sure everything is sent the right direction back and forth, get everything to the SQ5 and broadcast again, and then I will start working through channel processing. All right, let's go through the Dante patching real quick. You'll notice here, I've got all my Dante stuff statically assigned. You don't have to do that. I do it for a handful of reasons, but that's a whole other discussion. So first things first, go to clock status in Dante controller and just make sure that your lead console, which in this case is our front of house, is set as the preferred leader. It usually can figure this out on its own, but I like to do this just in case. Then go to routing, and prior to this clip, I have pre-labeled everything, so the easiest way to do that is just double-click on whatever banner you would like to label, and then you can label in the receive and transmit categories. The other way to do it is device info, double-click, same process, receive and transmit. All right, so we're in routing. And first things first, I want to send, and so the SQ6 is the source of all my audio, so I'm going to send it to its destinations first. And we're sending to the SQ5 first. So transmitters right here, SQ6, receivers, SQ5, we hit that plus, and you can see I've already routed everything down one-to-one. The one caveat being click, and this is important to note for anybody that's running click for your in-ears and then sending stuff out to broadcast. I do not route it to broadcast at all. Therefore, we have no chance of screwing that up and sending our click out over broadcast. All right, so you can see here, though, since I've pre-labeled everything, it's easy to match things up one-to-one running down, and then just take care of your patching in console if you have anything that's weird. So there's that, and then we want to send from the SQ6 to the track rig, which is this computer we're on. Again, one-to-one. Now you'll notice I haven't named anything over here. I haven't labeled anything for the Mac itself, simply because it's a pass-through. We're using Dante Virtual Sound Card here as our pass-through. So any labeling I'm going to do in Logic, that way it can be fluid if I need to change something from week to week. And then back up here, obviously, you can see the pre-routing or the pre-labeling. So our routing is just one-to-one all the way down. And then the last thing we need to do is we need to send audio back to the SQ6. And in this case, it's coming from the track rig. So transmitters, iMac, receivers, SQ6, going to expand that. And you can see that I've got it tracked back down one-to-one here. Again, letting all the labeling happen in the SQ6 so that the iMac can be fluid. It's just a pass-through. Now, we know that the gain structure is going to be different between the track rig and the live inputs because of what we discussed earlier. The S-Link inputs and the Dante inputs don't share the same gain structure. It's not pre-integrated into the console like it is with the Avantis. So I'm going to dive in and make sure that just all the inputs that are coming in now respond correctly to a healthy gain structure. I want them to respond correctly, or as close to correctly now as possible. That way on Sunday morning when I have a live team here and I'm using my live inputs, I'll shoot for a very, very similar gain structure, and everything should be pretty stinking close. I'll probably throw a clip in here as we go along just so you can kind of get an idea of where I'm at and how much having that scene file or show file from the SQ5 helped. All right, so it's still a little rough, but it's getting there, and having that show file from the SQ5 saved me so much time, just from having to build everything out, and I've already got some buses set up and things like that, so it's coming along. Now what I'm fixing to do is take those same digital inputs and route them through to the in-ear layer. So I told you I double patched everything so that I could have in-ears that weren't affected by the house mix and vice versa. So now I'm going to take those virtual inputs and go patch them down where the second line of inputs are and start working through and building rough mixes for the team. So we have something to start with on Sunday morning. Okay, so everything is responding the way I want it to as far as pushing a healthy gain structure into what I've already created and getting a response from it. It sounds halfway decent in the house right now, and then I've got some rough mixes built for us to start with on Sunday morning. There's one more thing I need to do, though, before I shut all this down and sign off with you guys, and that is to create some snapshots here, or some scenes is what Alan and Heath calls them. That way I can jump in and out of this virtual sound check situation without having to manually repatch my I/O every time I need to work on it without a band here, at least for the next few weeks until we get our Avantis back. So the easiest way to do that is, while I still have the Dante tracks patched for in-ears, I'm going to go to Scenes and create one like I have here called Swift Virtual Ears, and then I'm going to hit Store. Once I do that, I'm going to go back to I/O, and I'm going to unpatch Dante from my ears, and I'm going to take it up top and repatch it for virtual sound check, so my regular house inputs. Once I've done that, I go back to Scenes, and then I create one called Virtual IPs. Store that. Then go back, unpatch Dante completely from your inputs, go back to your stage box, which in this case is S-Link, and patch everything the way it's supposed to be. So that means that I've gone in and I've done my double patch for in-ears. I've made sure all my local stuff is repatched correctly, the whole 9 yards. And then you can go back to Scenes and save your live IP settings. Final thing to do and not forget is make sure you go to Utility, go down to Data, and overwrite and save your actual show file so that you've got all of that stored. Well, that's it, folks. That's our temporary plan until we get our Avantis back. So thanks for joining me on this. I will let you know as soon as I have the Avantis back and how that process kind of unfolds and turns out. But if you like this kind of stuff, I would love it if you would share this, subscribe to the channel. That helps me get this information out to those that need it. That's really the whole purpose of this, is to help those that need information that I have, and same reason I go to YouTube is to find information that I don't have. So you guys really showed up and delivered on the last video about everything going on with the Avantis, so I really appreciate that. Know that that means a lot to me, and I would love it if we can keep pushing this forward. So thanks for being here, thanks for following me on this, and I will see you guys real soon.